Hermes Trismegistus, known by the ancient Egyptians as the Master of Masters. All fundamental and basic occult and esoteric teachings can be traced back to Hermes.
Rudy's Revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm an American. I have rights.
What's up, people? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. It is January 21st, 2025. Well, it happened yesterday. Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. There was much to see and much to talk about today. We're going to stick to the facts, so I'm going to be talking about the flurry of executive actions, mostly what Biden did in his last couple minutes as president, and some other breaking news, very important breaking news that we got to pay attention to. So let's get into the headlines for today, January 21st.
Rudy's Revelation.
All right, first up, we have breaking news. A patrol agent killed during a traffic stop with migrant suspect in Vermont. Obviously, this is of great issue because of what Donald Trump did yesterday with a flurry of executive actions. There must have been 20 or 30 just dealing with the border crisis alone, many of which can be visited in detail. So a lot of you might have seen the inauguration. It was quite a spectacle. The speeches were very poignant and worth paying attention to. They were cringeworthy for the left. During his inaugural speech, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had to sit through it eating shit the whole time. So as I was cheering and screaming, eating shit, I was watching Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden was out of it, but Kamala Harris clearly knew she had been defeated, and Trump laid it on thick. All right, let's get to other headlines here. We're going to start with Joe Biden. Joe Biden pardons 5 members of his family in final minutes in office. Mr. Biden emphasized that he did not believe his family did anything wrong, but he feared political attacks by Mr. Trump. This is obviously more gaslighting by the elite Democrats, trying to convince the American people that for some reason he's giving preemptive pardons to people that he said he didn't think committed crimes. Obviously, he's telegraphing that they did commit crimes and is trying to inoculate them against any sort of prosecution. Let's get into the story. Biden's action pardoned James B. Biden. Mr. Biden's actions pardoned James B. Biden, his brother, Sarah Jones Biden, James's wife, Valerie Biden Owens, Mr. Biden's sister, John T. Owens, Ms. Owens' husband, and Francis W. Biden, Mr. Biden's other brother. So these are all employees of the Biden crime family who used Biden's political office to shake down foreign companies or to sell access to foreign nations, foreign companies, and I believe in a lot of instances committed espionage with the Chinese Communist Party. The story goes on to say the White House announced the pardons with less than 20 minutes left in Mr. Biden's presidency after he had already walked into the Capitol Rotunda to witness the swearing in of Mr. Trump before leaving the Capitol for the last time as president. So for me, it's a little difficulty trying to figure out how the New York Times tries to paint this narrative that Joe Biden is not protecting people that committed crimes. They say the pardons are a remarkable coda to Mr. Biden's 50-year political career, underscoring the mistrust and anger the president feels about Mr. Trump. These people committed things that were against the law, crimes. They committed crimes. President Biden committed crimes too. They should all be prosecuted. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But I think in particular, and we're going to get to this in just a minute, that Trump should do an investigation into the destruction of the J6 committee's destruction of evidence, all the interviews and things they conducted, because that was indeed a crime. And so if they investigate it and subpoena those records and they had been destroyed, that'll obviously put into the record that that crime had been committed. All right, moving on. PJ Media, Trump slams Biden's family pardons, makes him look very guilty. As I just said previously, there's no other reason to give somebody a preemptive pardon than to shield them from prosecution. Biden himself even said that that's the whole purpose, is to shield these people from prosecution, and prosecuting people for what he says are trumped up charges, no pun intended, could ruin somebody, ruin their reputation. And that's exactly what he did to Donald Trump. And now he's trying to protect his family from prosecution for what I believe, and particularly James Biden, federal crimes. Not only James Biden, obviously Hunter Biden, Mark Milley. There's some questionable stuff there where he was telling our main military adversary that he was in control, and then don't worry, he would never attack. And then obviously the members, all the members of the January 6th committee were given preemptive pardons. Betty Thompson, Ratskin, all given preemptive pardons because they're guilty. They were guilty of conspiracy to destroy evidence. So, one more Biden story before we get into the executive actions and the inaugural. Fox News is reporting Biden frees radical left-wing killer convicted in FBI agents' murders during the last hour of presidency. FBI Director Christopher Wray called clemency wholly unjustified for Leonard Peltier, who is expected to be placed on house arrest after prison release. The fact is he's off death row, and now he's released from prison. And then there's another thing that kind of squeaked under the headlines here. You might have heard about it. New York Post is reporting Biden insisted he didn't sign executive order just weeks after doing so. Speaker Johnson reveals. So Speaker Johnson just came out and publicly admitted that at one point he had met with President Biden. He had a private conference with him, and he was referring to executive action that Mr. Biden, President Biden, had just signed, and Biden had no recollection of it and insisted several times that he didn't sign that, which of course is quite an issue, especially when they were saying he was mentally fit to hold office. He was never mentally fit to hold office, and he should have been removed using the 25th Amendment. But his insurance policy, Kamala Harris, which he stuck the Democratic Party with after the coup. It was a coup, even though that Chuck Schumer now comes out and says that he urged the president not to run again. This is a weaved narrative that didn't actually happen. The coup happened when he was in Las Vegas and injected with a stroke drug, which temporarily incapacitated President Biden. And then that's when that letter was sent out saying, I'm not going to run for office. So there might have been a secret meeting with Chuck Schumer, but that was not the impetus of the coup. All right, more news before we get into the executive orders. The post-millennial Senate passes the Senate passes Lake and Riley Act. 33 Democrats vote against it. Final vote was 64 to 35. I guess a couple of Republicans voted against it too. This is very strange. The problem with the Lake and Riley Act, I previously reported as the Senate passed it, they put it into cloture, which means they stopped debate. So they were just waiting to pass it until Trump got into office or on Inauguration Day, because they knew Joe Biden might not sign it. And so, as I speculated, that they were going to wait for Trump to take office to pass this bill. It's a House bill. One more story, New York Post, Marco Rubio confirmed as Trump's Secretary of State by Senate. So he's the first confirmation of Trump's cabinet picks. He was obviously a shoo-in because Marco Rubio is an establishment Republican who's a bit of a war hawk, but he's a particular war hawk on China, which is the most important thing, probably why he picked him. But also, the reason he went with an establishment Republican, as he found out with the last guy he had in last time around, is that the foreign policy blob, which is the State Department bureaucracy, is needed, particularly in the beginning, because that is the most entrenched bureaucracy, and that's where most of the sleeper cells for groups like the Council on Foreign Relations sit. Other establishments are not as important as the Department of State. Don't forget, the Department of State runs the CIA, which is the shock troops for the elite, the New World Order, the Council on Foreign Relations, all these people that use places like the Council on Foreign Relations to devise the New World Order agenda. Okay. Let's start with a speech. National Review, Trump's inaugural speech for a Trump presidency. It's going to be a new golden age as we stand on the verge of 4 greatest years in American history. You should go look at the whole speech. It's telling. Trump doesn't pull any punches, and he goes on to reiterate all the things that he plans to do. Story goes on to say his assurances that he will build up the military, push back on electric vehicle mandates, all done already, exploit fossil fuel resources to the maximum extent possible, and to end all government pressure for censorship were welcome as well. On the other side of the ledger, according to the National Review, which is establishment conservatism, also consistent with his campaign, Trump extolled tariffs as a magic economic elixir, saying he will establish an external revenue service to handle the flood of revenues from tariffs and other taxes on products from foreign countries. And he says we're taking back the Panama Canal, which were just a few of the noted policy objectives from the speech. The establishment conservatives, big business, are not jazzed about tariffs because they were the ones that came up with the idea to offshore manufacturing to save the money, to develop a stronger revenue stream for their investors. But as Trump said, and I hope the National Review doesn't get into painting a false narrative of whether the tariffs themselves will be broad-based. They're not broad-based. They're targeted. And targeted tariffs are a successful tool of foreign diplomacy, A, and also to develop revenue streams that don't come from the American taxpayer. All right, let's get into the executive orders. Fox News is reporting Trump signs dozens of executive orders fulfilling many but not all the campaign promises as of yet when this was published. President Trump, in front of thousands of supporters jammed inside D.C. Arena, signs what he called a series of historic executive orders. And then, this is kind of an old story, because then after the DC arena, he went to the Oval Office where he held a small press gaggle, sort of a impromptu press conference with Fox and other foreign media outlets, and continued to sign executive orders, many of which were for the border, but also all the other things that he promised, establishing DOGE, getting rid of DEI. And one of the ones he signed in the DC arena was, as the federal government is concerned, there are only two genders. And just to be specific, there are only two sexes. Genders, as defined today, are expressions of your sexuality. So the way gender is defined differently, and that's why they do it that way, is it's something that is expressed and not a biological sex. The Federalist is reporting Trump's executive orders on immigration could prove Biden could have secured the border at any time. Well, we know this because Trump did this in 2017 as well. He tried to curtail the border immediately with executive actions, which, proves fairly successful. From Reuters, Trump launches sweeping border crackdown mass deportation push. Trump signs, this is from the New York Post, Trump signs TikTok executive order to give parent company Lifeline as president insists popular app is worthless if I don't improve it. Well, what he's talking about here is if it doesn't function in America, the American version, let's say, the American algorithm is worthless. Because, and this is what Trump bases most of his policies on, which is correct. The United States is the biggest market of consumers, period. Doesn't matter what you're selling. Even if it's rice, if it's wheat, if it's steel, if it's a social app, social media app, whatever it is, cars, it's the biggest market. It has the biggest amount of disposable income among its large population. Not as large as China, and it's an open market, more or less. So that's what he's taking advantage of. Other executive orders include, as Fox News reports, Trump orders U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization. Trump's previous effort to extricate the U.S. from the WHO was foiled by President Joe Biden, of course. Not only that, but President Joe Biden signed away our sovereignty by agreeing with the World Health Organization treaty, combine, whatever you want to call it, that said, in the advent of a global pandemic, that the United States would give up all the decision making, all their executive power to the World Health Organization. This is insane. This is giving, and what Europe has already done, giving up the sovereignty to a supranational organization like the World Health Organization, which is run by the Chinese, by the way. So it's like, that would just be, that's a surrender. Thank God Trump got elected. The Wall Street Journal, Trump pardons nearly 1,500 January 6 rioters. The action comes after Biden immunizes family and other potential GOP targets from departing. Well, here's the thing with January 6th. And this is what the Wall Street Journal got correct. Trump pardons nearly 1,500, all 1,500 January 6 rioters, except for a few. And these are the only ones that really committed assault on, not pushing, but serious assault and battery mostly on police officers. Because pushing police officers in a riotous situation, the action comes after Biden immunizes family and other potential GOP targets before departing. So this is the problem, is the reason Trump did what he did, pardoning the January 6 guys, is because Biden committed a cover-up by immunizing, giving preemptive pardons to all the members of the January 6 committee who destroyed all the evidence of their investigation, which would have likely led to the exoneration of most of the people anyway, because if it's found out that the riots themselves, or particularly the break-in of the Capitol, was engineered and orchestrated by agents of the federal government or their assets, would have led to their pardon anyway. It didn't matter what they were convicted of, because the breach probably never would have happened if it wasn't for people like Ray Epps and other leftists who were in the crowd as assets for the government plan. PJ Media has reported Liberty and Justice for All. Trump pardons 1,500 plus J6ers and pro-life activists. So also in there was a pro-life activist who was arrested on federal charges because he touched a man who was berating his son as they protested an abortion clinic. If I'm correct, I believe I'm correct on that. All right, Reuters, Trump announces Doge advisory group attracting instant lawsuits. Most of the executive actions are going to be fought back against from the Democrats. And the reasoning is the fact that the left haven't given up. They said they were going to, the resistance isn't going to be as powerful because a lot of the people have come to their senses. A lot of the people that were at Trump's first inauguration with the pussy hats and all this shit. You know, after 4 years of Biden, most of those people have figured out that they were wrong. There was some protesters at the inauguration, but less than 100 compared to the tens of thousands previously of the last inauguration. But what they were talking about is that the resistance is lessening, softening. I think the mainstream media referred to it as softening. This is a ploy. Do not let your guard down. All the people I converse with and know on the left is they're just figuring out what the OFA is going to tell them to do. What is the way of resisting? Because if you look at the news media, it's the same thing after Trump got shot. They were supposed to lessen their rhetoric that drove, mind controlled basically, the assassin. They were supposed to lessen their rhetoric. A day or two later, they were back at it. Joy Reid, particularly, I blame her for the assassination attempt and for all the crazy blue Kool-Aid drinking blue hairs out there that don't like a particular political group because they don't like the guy, because they believe things that aren't true. All right. Let's go on. Trump scraps Biden's drilling electric vehicle and climate policies in bid to lower prices, says the New York Post. So this is very important because all these are going to be fought in court. But Biden's ban on millions of acres of offshore drilling was just preemptively trying to undermine Trump's presidency. I'm telling you, the left is not done. They're doing all they can to fight. And they even said it. There were many Democrat senators, whether it was Chuck Schumer or who was the other guy that was on the media just recently. We got to get ready to fight. We got to fight. Why? At least Bernie Sanders said, I'm not going to fight everything that he does, because don't forget that Bernie Sanders is an independent senator that caucuses with the Democrats. So Bernie Sanders used to be against open borders. And also the electric vehicle mandates. All the mandates were ridiculous. And we're going to get to a bunch of them, a bunch of the executive orders in detail in just a second. And of course, the climate policies. With the executive action, he undid all the ridiculous Green New Deal shit. Washington Examiner reports Trump signs order abolishing gender ideology in federal policy. This is important. As I stated earlier, as the federal government is concerned, there are two genders, male and female. All right, but that equates to sex. So, for simplicity. This is a good cultural item to hang his hat on. I mean, all these are going to be fought. Go for it, but we'll see. Federalist is reporting 7 highlights from Trump's inauguration address. The golden age of America begins now. Slams weaponization of the Justice Department. Pledges to declare border emergency. Drill, baby, drill. Opening energy exploration. An end to federally subsidized identity politics, which we just talked about. Reckoning for military COVID shot mandate. We're going to get to that because these are just from the speech. And this is what I want to compare to the actual executive orders. So Trump plans reckoning for military COVID shot mandate. Announces rebrand for Gulf of Mexico as Gulf of America. That's going to be a little bit harder to do. Mission to Mars. That this is, I believe, and then Elon Musk obviously cheered about this one. And then we're going to get into another one just in a minute, which is a little more, which is going to be immediately challenged because he's talking about changing the birthright citizenship law. And he's trying to do that with an executive action. That's going to be hard to do. So we'll look at the Supreme Court and see what they're going to say about the interpretation of birthright citizenship. Because there are a couple issues here. Obviously, when the Constitution was written, it was a 3-month journey by boat to get to the United States. So they figured if you made it here and you had children here, those children would be American citizens. Now people can fly over here in an hour or two. Let's be realistic, but let's say, I think the flight to Europe is 7 hours. Have a baby, and that baby, if it's born in a U.S. hospital, is a United States citizen. And then you have an anchor baby. So I think the law should be adjusted, or the amendment should be adjusted, and that's what he's trying to do. President Trump signed an order that would treat the U.S.-born children of undocumented immigrants as non-citizens, effectively denying them birthright citizenship. And of course, like I said, the Constitution will be at issue here. All right, the BBC breaks down what executive orders did Trump sign on day one, and we'll get into that. Immigration. There were a bunch on immigration. He declared a national emergency. And of course, the Democrats said, oh, there's no national emergency. Close the border, birthright citizenship. And then and a few on climate and energy, pull out of the Paris Agreement, energy emergency, open up Alaska, including UNRWA, ended the Green New Deal, pulled out of the World Health Organization, diversity and gender, transgender people. Trump has declared that the U.S. will only recognize two sexes, male and female. Now, if you look at some of the mainstream media, what are they doing immediately? They're saying removing protections for transgender people. And as the mainstream media often says, mainstream media often says transgender people are under attack. They're not under attack. Nobody is attacking transgender people. Most of the people that are murdered for being transgender are actually prostitutes. BBC also goes into DEI. Trump has also halted all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs within the federal government. And Trump signed an executive order postponing by 75 days the implementation of a law that would ban Chinese-owned app TikTok in the United States. It's got to be run by Americans. And he's gonna call for a divestiture of TikTok to the federal government, who would just then sell their share to the highest bidder. So the federal government would get the money. Interesting plan. I know there's one offer out there from the Shark Tank guy, Kevin O'Leary, who had put together investors to buy half of TikTok, I guess it would be. 2021 Capitol riot pardoning thousands who stormed the U.S. Capitol, commuting sentences of Oath Keepers, Proud Boys. So the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys who were convicted of seditious conspiracy, which is, they had no plan to overthrow the government, and they didn't bring guns to the Capitol or anything like that. Apparently, they were going to stand by the side of Trump in denying the certification. So denying the certification doesn't mean you're going to undermine the certification in any way, because there was no proof that they did. Just showing up there, that doesn't constitute that. Government reform, Doge and Elon Musk. So he initiated Doge. Freeze on federal hiring, federal employees returning to the office, all the ones that were working from home have to come to the office now, and said the government will not engage in the free speech of American citizens. The government would not engage in the censorship of free speech of American citizens, I should say. Reversing Biden's policies, America First. Trump announced he's pausing foreign aid, outlining that he wants to review foreign assistance programs. Great. Cuba. Trump wants to undo Biden's recent decision to remove Cuba from the U.S. state lists of sponsors of terrorism, because there was an act of terrorism by a Cuban agent just recently. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who is a Cuban communist agent, helped start, I shouldn't say help start, but helped allow the devastation from the wildfires. Also, regulatory freeze, another order directs federal agencies to refrain from issuing any new regulations until the Trump administration has full control of the government. The next one is quite important. Unvaccinated federal workers. As part of a directive reversing Biden-era policies, Trump revoked a mandate that federal workers must be vaccinated with the COVID vaccine. Thank God. He has promised to reinstate 8,000 military service members who were discharged due to the Pentagon's COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. Thank God. Welcome back, all the Navy SEAL operators. I think there were almost 2,000 of them who left. Or was it 800? I think Special Forces overall lost almost 2,000. Welcome back. And thank Donald Trump for the justice. And then the economy, tackling inflation. U.S. Federal Department and agency to address the cost of living. The directive, which is not an executive order, asks agencies to look at lowering costs for housing, healthcare, and key household items, groceries, and fuel. Renaming the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and Alaska's Mount Denali back to Mount McKinley. What Trump has not acted on yet is tariffs. Because the business community is a little skittish about tariffs. And as I said previously, as much as the mainstream media was talking about broad-based tariffs or sweeping tariffs or blanket tariffs, that was never the intended goal. Now, Donald Trump yesterday did talk about blanket tariffs, talked about the tariffs against Canada and Mexico, which is just a threat, a diplomatic tool. But he talked about blanket tariffs for every country that's doing business with the U.S. if there's not dialogue first. So he's using it as a negotiation tool. Will there be blanket broad-based tariffs? I doubt it. It would hurt the economy. And I think he's too smart for that. Post-Millennial is reporting Trump deportations to take place in LA, Denver, Philly, DC, Chicago. Cities being targeted in the early enforcement operations include Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. area, according to Tom Homan. Well, they're making an early foray into Democratic cities. And that's the point they're trying to make, is there is going to be an effort to get inside sanctuary cities first. Why? Is because there will be a legal melee that's going to occur subsequently. So they're going to try to go in there early and they will meet resistance. And so then the federal government will sue those cities. And some people might be held legally, criminally accountable, not just civilly. All right, let's get to the reaction now. The Federalist, the best of the worst lefty journo meltdowns, Trump inauguration 2.0 edition. CBS News, I don't see many people of color, says CBS Morning's co-anchor Gayle King. So they're going with racist already. Jake Tapper melts down at the fact that X's Elon Musk, Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, and Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Apple's Tim Cook, and Google's Sundar Pichai attended the inauguration church service with Donald Trump. We're about to enter an era of deep fakes and oligarchy. New York Times, Trump was sworn in as 47th president of the United States. In his address, he painted a grim portrait of a country on its knees that only he can revive and proclaimed that he would put America first, vowing to rebalance the scale of justice. I don't think that was too lefty loony. That's basically what he said. And, you know, I quote the New York Times all the time and source them and reference them. They report facts, but if you dig deeper into the magazine or the style section, they go way, way overboard. But usually in the news section, particularly in the newspaper, less so online when the articles make it up online. I mean, they report facts, they just mischaracterize the facts. And when the thing is, too, if you look at this, they don't take the whole sentence. They don't quote the whole sentence. They just quote, put America first, vowing to rebalance And they don't use the whole quote, rebalance the scales of justice. Why don't you use the whole quote? Because they've been out of kilter, obviously. MSNBC host Rachel Maddow suffers an on-air meltdown over Trump's plan to sign executive order ending birthright citizenship. I don't like Rachel Maddow. Sorry to admit, I used to watch her. My mom watched her. But she's wrong. And she was wrong all along. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't a big fan of the Bush, George W. Bush, excuse me. I hated Dick Cheney and that whole, the 9/11 thing and the subsequent wars. You know, that was Republican business as usual. Things have changed, obviously, under Donald Trump. But she was wrong even then. And she's even more wrong now. The effort for the mainstream media to try to stop Donald Trump has been unrelenting, without pause. And I doubt that the few people that, you know, the few diehard liberals, progressives, I should say, that will watch Rachel Maddow and MSNBC won't match for the burgeoning people that want conservative news. I had a comment just recently, echo chamber, this is just an echo chamber. It's not an echo chamber. I read all types of news. If you report something truthful, Donald Trump is not a criminal. He's pretty squeaky clean. More so than Biden. He didn't shower with his daughters. You know what I mean? His sons are pretty on the straight and narrow. It's not like Hunter Biden. You know, they don't have mental and sexual problems. But they portray Donald Trump as this terrible person. And I often say, you know, I'm not that fond of him personally. I kind of think he's funny now. But to paint him as some sort of racist Nazi, he should sue. He should sue for that because that's not him. Anyway. Federalist is reporting. Uh-oh. Experiencing technical difficulties. The Federalist reports after Elon Musk raises his hand from his heart, PBS labels him a fascist. And I'm going to get into this in just a second. If I need to fix something here. So the deal was that Elon Musk made a salute. Now, the conservatives are saying that he went like this and threw his heart into the crowd. I mean, that's debatable, right? What it looked like was a Roman salute. And a Roman salute is this. It hail Caesar, right? Mussolini adopted it, and then Hitler adopted it. And Hitler named his Third Reich, Third Reign, as an extension of the Roman Empire. This doesn't bother me, the Nazi salute. That doesn't mean I'm a Nazi. Do, you know, crazy neo-Nazis who are in the woods of Mississippi or whatever, or Idaho, do they have meetings and they salute the Nazi flag? Maybe. I mean, I don't do this, but this is the Roman salute. And so if I want to do this, then I do this. I'm not hailing Nazis. I have no affinity for Adolf Hitler. I mean, the problem is now you can't do anything. You can't say anything because it's going to cause offense. So Perry, if you're watching today, I hope there's no offense taken that I do the Roman salute. I'm not Heiling Hitler. I'm not a Nazi, a National Socialist, or any type of socialist. I'm not an Italian fascist. People are crazy. So if Elon Musk wants to do that now, would I do that in public? Probably not. But I'm not going to hold anything against somebody who does that, who doesn't profess some sort of adherence to neo-Nazism. Like neo-Nazis even know what National Socialism is, or maybe they do. Who knows? Just why waste your time with that kind of ideology? There's so much more to understand. Anyway, I don't want to get into small-minded thinking. All right, more news. The BJ Media, the left never learns. A constitutional attorney. Oh, geez. There we go. Constitutional attorney is first to call for Trump's impeachment again. Like I said, I'm not gonna get into small-minded thinking. He just got inaugurated. How are you going to impeach him for what? Because he's a convicted felon. I mean, did you look at the case? Did you look how it was presided over? Merchant is a kangaroo. And the fact that he didn't recuse himself when his daughter was working for the Democratic Party. I mean, not just working, like getting a small salary, getting millions of dollars in consulting fees. That's not a little bit amount of money. More meltdowns. MSNBC anchors Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, triggered by Trump's inauguration. How is this happening again in America? Like I just mentioned, Rachel Maddow sucks. Joy Reid is the worst. She is actually a racist communist agitator. She is there. If you look at, she's constantly filming herself, even when she's not on MSNBC, calling people to not only resist, but to act out, to go and act and to assume this psychological framework, this thinking to resist conservative politics at all costs because, you know, and she's not a stupid person, so she's lying, because Republicans are all racist and Nazis. And they want to round up black people and deny people, black people or people of color, employment opportunity and kill gays and do all these things. It's not real. It's not real. The mass immigration hurt communities of color probably more than any other community. And that was progressive policies. All right, Market Watch reports Trump coin crashes, recovers, and slumps anew following Melania coin launch. What's next for the increasing first family in the crypto industry? What are they talking about here? Trump USD was up when it peaked at 3. It was up 3, almost 4 points, over $75 per coin before plunging back down to 40. All right, he's got a new coin. I mean, good for him. That doesn't confront me. You know, digital currency is, you know, if you're in Bitcoin, probably you're in good shape. But all these other digital currencies. What Trump is going to do, though, he is going to build a United States Bitcoin reserve. Very important. All right, more headlines here. From the New York Times. If you didn't hear, Vivek Ramaswamy will bow out of cost-cutting project Doge and run for governor in Ohio. The billionaire decided he would not campaign while helping lead the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge. But tensions with Elon Musk were also evident. They're not true. Let's start here. The New York Times and many other left-leaning media outfits consistently report that MAGA or the Republicans or conservatives are engaged in all this infighting because they have a big tent, and when you have a big tent, you can't get everybody in line, blah, blah, blah. It's debate. Everybody can debate. We're open for debate on the right. That's why I lean right. Is because if you can't have an argument, and I mean a debate, but when I say argument, then it could very well lead to violence. So, free speech, debate, argument, interchange, verbal interchange, or written correspondence should all be allowed. Why? Is it because it forestalls violence? Now, the second thing is, so there's no rift between Elon Musk and Vivek. What happened was that Vivek already announced that he was interested in running for governor of Ohio. Because he was, this whole thing running for president, he wanted to launch a political career because he's made his millions. So he wanted to launch a political career, so he ran for president, and then he wanted to be included in the administration. He got a lower, it was not even in the administration. Doge is really not part of the administration. It's a separate entity. So when he found out early on that he wasn't getting a cabinet position, he's still a little young and politically naive. I don't mean naive in the sense is that he doesn't know what he's doing. He does know what he's doing, but he's new to the game. That he decided to set his eyes on where he's from, Ohio, the governorship there, because DeWine is not going to seek another term. Now, also in the mix was J.D. Vance's Ohio Senate seat. So, the lieutenant governor, Hull, forget what his name is. He was either going to be slated to take over for DeWine or to run again when DeWine steps down next year. I think it's next year. The lieutenant governor was going to run for the governorship. Easy slide in. But DeWine appointed him for the Senate seat, for J.D. Vance's Senate seat. So now that opens up Vivek's run. And he already has all the people in place from his presidential run still. And so he didn't want to wait. So he's gearing up his presidential campaign team again and with his eye on the governorship of Ohio. Okay. Moving on into some international news. So I talked about this quite a bit. The Federalist, China's Red Note app, is already replacing TikTok and threatening American minds and security. Going to go through this quickly. So Americans have begun searching for alternatives for TikTok, and refugees go to Red Note, a Chinese app that has rapidly gained traction in the U.S. after Taylor Lorenz, a former tech writer for the New York Times and Washington Post, has taken to X to encourage her followers to join her on Red Note, which is... TikTok wasn't communist. Red Note is communist. She says it's the hottest new social app in America. It's a Chinese communist app. Red Note is owned by Xinging Information Technology, a company based in Shanghai. The app's Chinese name is Xiao Hongshu, which translates into Little Red Book. You didn't know what the Little Red Book is. This name pays tribute to the small book containing quotes from the speeches and writings of Chinese communist dictator Chairman Mao. During China's Cultural Revolution, millions of Chinese were required to carry these little books with bright red covers to study and memorize, Mao's words anytime, anywhere. This is scary. This is part of a communist communist revolution, cultural revolution, that Taylor Lorenz is fanning the flames of. We've had a culture war, undermining of American culture, a Marxist cultural war going on. Speaking of China, let's see if I can do this. Reuters reports China does not pursue a trade surplus, willing to balance trade. And they're talking specifically about trade with the United States now that Donald Trump has taken office. So they're trying not to get the ire of Donald Trump. A couple more articles here before we close out on the international scale. This is from last week. One American News. Argentina seals budget surplus for first time in 14 years. Now, the reason this is important because Javier Milei, the new president of Argentina, who is a libertarian economist, a radical, I hate to use the word radical, let's say reactionary, economist who went around with a chainsaw, that was his one of his campaign props, to slash government spending, to slash social institutions within the Argentinian government. Argentina was experiencing macro inflation, hyperinflation, with inflation rates over 100%, 200%. They needed this guy to rescue the country, and his economics are proving to be correct. Now, it's a little bit like an austerity program that the rich stipends for people on social services will be cut. Reuters again, with von der Leyen signals EU willingness to work with US in Davos speech. So von der Leyen is the president of the EU, and the EU is run by the Davos crowd, by the WEF, the World Economic Forum. And as I said previously, America is the largest market. So, of course, you're going to have to work with the US. No, you're not going to have a very bright economic future if you try to shut out the US. It's not going to happen. Thanks for joining me today. Please engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, get into the conversation, share the podcast, please. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically and biologically. And also don't forget to join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. on Rumble. It's a good day. It's a good day. Donald Trump is now back in office. Thank God. The alternative was very worrisome. And this is going to be a good 4 years. Not for the left. But probably at the end of this 4 years, there are going to be very few people clinging to this ideology of Joe Biden and the progressive left, which wasn't fiscally responsible, first of all, because of the spending, particularly associated with the Green New Deal mostly, but I mean, whatever you call it, the Inflation Reduction Act, that kind of irresponsible spending got us in the situation we're in. I'm so glad that Joe Biden is gone. He cost me my career, my job with a stupid COVID mandate. Luckily, didn't cost me any money with a stupid eviction moratorium. But he also ruined any finances I had squirreled away by devaluing them by almost 20%. So I've never had a president affect my life so adversely than Joe Biden. And it's not just me, it's a lot of different people in the United States. So fuck you, Joe Biden. Glad to see you go. I hope your time on this world, in this world, is nigh. And I usually don't like to say that about another human being, but I've never had somebody be so irresponsible in their office and so traitorous to this country. It blows the fucking mind that this guy was allowed to serve. And the Democrats that propped him up all the way to the end and then threw him under the bus, those people are still around, and they should be fought with every fiber of your body. Not physically fought, but with every word coming out of your mouth, every keystroke. Fight the fucking Democrat, the progressives, really. They all gotta go. Because they were the ones that put him in there. Benny Thompson, who just got a preemptive pardon, James Clyburn, all put Joe Biden where he was. Luckily, he didn't stay for another 4 years. We got Trump back. Hail Caesar. All right, see you tomorrow. Stay hip to the trick. Oh, shit. Respect.
I'm an American. I have rights.